Are we good? I'm in Michael Brooks. We are broadcasting live from Brooklyn, USA. This is the Michael Brooks Show in Brooklyn, where left is best, as it is everywhere else, with super producer Matt Leck.
Hello.
Chief economist David Griscom.
How's it going?
Super producer David Slavic roaming the TMBS digitosphere in the ever-expanding, ever-growing Left is Best universe. On this week's program, Big Woz, my fellow woke bro, co-host of Count the Dings. He's calling us from LA, or actually we're calling him, and we're talking about, is Kanye finally escaping the sunken place? Plus, Beto O'Rourke panders hard, Pusha T goes hard. All that and more with returning crew and co-host of Woke Bros, Big Woz, Harvey Kaye, the great professor of FDR, Thomas Paine, and American social democracy. He's here. He's back. He's in Brooklyn. We're talking about how the left can really gain power and tapping into the American radical tradition in the face of American fascism. Griscom's breaking down some economics. Leck is regulating. We have a shout out to our friends in Brazil. We have a post game, which includes my debate with a woman who used, quote unquote, true psychological theory to explain why Trump is the most mentally healthy president of all time. Plus, we're going to make fun of Sebastian Gorka, a whole lot more. And in a mere minutes from now, a very important, very special announcement on tonight's TMBS. So much to get to. Let's get to it. So, we've been following Brazil from quite some time. We knew it was important. We knew it mattered, and it did not go the way that it should have gone. The results of this past weekend's elections were nothing short of horrific. Jair Bolsonaro is the real thing. I've seen a lot of pedantic debates about this or that definition of fascism, but the reality is he is a hard far-right authoritarian who is promising political, ethnic, and social cleansing, and whose entire macroeconomic plan is nothing but the wholesale privatization and sell-off of Brazil. Massive austerity, getting rid of the Amazon, which will have massive global climate implications, and of course, the capital class, from the Wall Street Journal to Brazilian oligarchs to very excited tweets from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation focused on just that. This is a terrible election result, and we see that democracy is under threat in Brazil. We also see that most of the voting patterns fit a class divide. The poor voted for Haddad, the wealthy voted for Bolsonaro. And it's very important to recognize a distinction here, and several people have pointed this out. There is a far right, a global insurgent far right, Donald Trump, and across Europe, that harkens back either to pre-World War II fascist traditions in Europe and emerges out of the depths and swamps of the alt-right, online culture, and various traditions of American apartheid and reactionary politics. But in Brazil, and right now in Latin America, this is very specific because we have people that are still alive that were involved in eliminationist mass murder campaigns to destroy communists and all members of the left with the active support of the United States. This is the context that Jair Bolsonaro comes from, and this is what he's promising to bring and empower in Brazil. And of course, this started several years ago with the wholesale attempt to criminalize and delegitimize the Workers' Party, which is in fact the world's youngest social democratic party, a moderate party governed by Lula da Silva, who remains the world's most prominent political prisoner. We will not stop talking about him, and Dilma Rousseff. This also indicts the Obama administration, which going back to 2009 supported the coup in Honduras, where right-wing forces took out Manuel Zelaya, a moderate figure. Leaders, especially leaders like Lula, were eager to work with the Obama administration in a moderate direction that would have protected some national industries and engaged in social progress. They thought they saw a friend in Obama, but instead they got an Obama administration and a Clinton State Department and a Justice Department that backed a far-right reversal of the gains of the pink tide. And this is where we are today. And we see this globally, of course. We see a political situation in the Middle East defined by monarchies and oil and arms sales. We see a U.S. hegemony, which is even more violent and unpredictable under Trump. We see a rising attempt at Chinese hegemony that unfortunately does not promise anything to do with names like People's Liberation Army. It's rather a different version of authoritarian capitalism. And that's why a meeting that's taking place on November 30th in Vermont with Bernie Sanders and Yanis Varoufakis is incredibly important. The goal of which is to create a global progressive international, a global left movement. They've asked AMLO, the incoming Mexican president, one of the only bright spots now in the global electoral scene, to join this movement. This is aligned with Jeremy Corbyn and the leadership he's bringing to the UK, and it's also aligned with all of the remnants, even those that were crushed, of the African awakening movements, the uprisings in the Middle East in 2011, Occupy movement here, the Occupy movement in Spain, the Occupy movement in Israel, those involved in the BDS movement, I would argue more broadly. There is a global social force to democratize economies, to anchor human rights, to really deliver power in a broad-based way. It's there, but it's disconnected from failed social democratic parties, and it is under siege by a resurgent far right, which is, as I always say, capital will break fascist. So we need to be international in every way, shape, and form. And that could mean a whole number of things. Partially, it means reassessing the legacy of a imperfect and problematic, but in some ways very important and very successful Hugo Chavez. And the lessons of Brazil are going to give us uncomfortable lessons about places like Cuba and Venezuela and debates about repression or not repression. Now, I'm in no way defending repression or cracking down on anybody's speech in any way, shape, or form. But we need to be real about power. And we need to be real about the forces that are aligned against even those of us that try to do things in the most moderate fashion possible, even those of us who are massively successful and conciliatory national leaders like Lula da Silva in his enormously successful terms as president of Brazil. It's also going to mean that when we go into 2020, it's not good enough to just have a left domestic policy. Bernie Sanders has been sketching a global outline. That's necessary. Elizabeth Warren better follow suit if she wants to be part of that progressive conversation. And even those on the moderate and centrist ends need to be told and need to be made to understood that we get that this is globally connected. We understand that even the most modest reform package here is undermined by projecting violence abroad. Butter at home, guns abroad, LBJ is not going to work. It needs to be globally synchronized. It needs to be globally anchored. And we need to see the parallels in every way, shape, and form between our struggle and struggles everywhere internationally. The left exists. It's here. The movements are here. The energy's here. The people's desires are here. And the power and the coherence and the strategy needs to form to back it up. The Bernie and Yanis meeting is essential. We will continue in solidarity with Brazil and everywhere else every single day in our own small way on this show. That has always been the mission, in fact, of this show, to have that type of global resonance, to have that type of global connection, to build out those connections. And we will certainly don't expect to hear less about Lula from me because not only is that the most prominent political prisoner of our time, Lula, that also is a symbol of a certain attempt that was crushed. And it was crushed not only by Brazilian elites and fascistic tendencies, it was crushed and celebrated by the fascistic tendencies and far right of the United States today, Trump and Bannon and this whole disgusting gang, but also in the utter failure of modern democratic politics to build out a global coalition. One that even JFK, who was a conservative Cold Warrior, actually understood in the early 60s, supporting decolonization of Africa. That's what we need. Now, Griscom, I want you to talk a little bit about some examples here from the Second International because this coalesces really well with what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, the Second International is one of the more proud traditions of the socialist movement in the 20th century, and this was a grouping of many different labor and socialist parties across Europe. It also included folks from Latin South America, the United States, Turkey, and India. And the idea was just to create a unified body where the working class could come together and organize and debate ideas so that they could have internal coherence, working through the difficult questions that you need to figure out for socialism, but also being able to present a united front to create movements that did not just end at borders, to actually find movements that exceed them. And this is where a lot of these great socialist traditions come from. So this is the beginning of May Day.
Right.
That was a Second International position. The creation of International Working Women's Day, that was an international socialist position. And it became very important, especially in the anti-war movements against the the great imperialist world of World War I. And you look at the debates that you read about, between folks like Lenin and Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Kautsky. Right, this was the setting that this international movement was being fought in, and it's very important in developing a working class consciousness that was not nationalist. And what we're seeing more and more now is a very nationalist consciousness, which is something that's dangerous. And just a little bit of extra history is after the Second International, after the Soviet Revolution, it became the Third International, which only lasted for a little while until Stalin actually ended the international movement in favor of the idea of socialism in one country.
Right.
So since then, there have been some attempts to create a new international, but it has had many different issues, and there's been there's an old vestige of the international, which the DSA rightfully just joined to leave because it basically had probably
it's like social democratic.
Yeah, well,
center.
The U.S. the Democratic Party in the United States was a member of that international.
Right.
So creating this kind of international movement, is exactly what we definitely need to be doing right now when we're seeing the rise of global fascism.
And we need to see it as, look, globally synchronized does not mean a global hegemonic project that comes from the centers and filters to the peripheries. It's going to look differently in every different context. It's going to be a collaborative cross-border process, and it needs to be practical and workmanlike. But it does need to be synchronized, both for values, because we always, if we share these sort of socialist values, they're fundamentally international. They're fundamentally internationalist. And secondly, it's not going to work. Capital is fluid. Capital is liquid. Capital moves. If you cannot counteract that without some level of global coordination. And there also needs to be a positive and affirmative sense back in the left that, like, this is actually, there's doing things like fighting racism because racism is wrong and disgusting and stupid and retrograde and undermines our projects and is just generally pathetic. But there's also the version that this isn't just a sort of cataloging of ills. It's a better way to be in the world. It is better. I will defend that world cosmopolitan, not in a sort of jet setting, top down, I like good food and I only skip between New York, London sense, but in a truly experiential, global, engaged and acting on and receptive to the world sense. We are global. We learn and move off of everything and contribute back to that. And that is affirmative, that is positive, and it's a better way to be.
And that's something I think that's so important about the idea of bringing back the international is we have a lot of folks who've come out and reached out to us on this show after our reporting on Brazil, and they're very rightfully worried about what's going on, and they're asking us what can I do, how can I participate. Well, it's definitely something that's difficult to answer without a kind of structure that allows for a kind of across the international borders, working class mobilization and working class solidarity and people working together and being able to create this forum where we're able to join forces is exactly the kind of thing that people should be doing. If you're worried about what's going on in Brazil, it's like these are the kind of connections with people on the ground in Brazil, with people who are in solidarity with them in the United States and in Europe and in Asia. This is the kind of movement that we need to be seeing. Because if we don't, if we continue to wait, Steve Bannon understands that politics is international. He's jet setting around the world, and he is certainly not, sending a nice cosmopolitan message. I mean, he's sending one of like horrific fascism.
That's right. And also the verdict has been in on how these social media platforms mainly affect politics, and that is catastrophically. But they're still the reality of how we're communicating and living. So use that to harness this global momentum we need. Guys, are we like, things okay? Okay. I do want to get to the announcement in a second, Matt. So is there a way you could put that up on screen before you get back to it? Thanks. All right, guys. And is my board up? This is actually a pretty big piece of breaking news. If you could just make it a little bigger for me because I'm at a funny angle. Thanks. If you will see on screen, the first Michael Brooks live show is happening, guys. We have booked out the Bell House in Gowanus in downtown Brooklyn, USA, February 1st, 2019. The crew is going to be there. Obviously myself, Matt, David Griscom, potentially David Slavic. And we have very special guests, crew, Bhaskar Sunkara and Alona Minkowski. They just put it as, I just noticed now, it's just Alona. I kind of actually like the idea of Alona being iconic enough to just go by one name, but maybe we'll fix that. It's possible that Woz will be there, although that is up in the air. So there is a possible addition of my comrade and brother for life, Woz, but Bhaskar and Alona Minkowski, of course, that's already an amazing show. And we have basically there's a couple, and also I'll just say this, we're working on it. For people who get these, what they call at the venue, they call them VIP tickets. That basically just means you show up at the door early, you hang out with us, have drinks, talk, take pictures. We're also going to have we're working on it. We should have T-shirts ready by then. So there'll also be a piece of merch that you can take with you as well. And then go and see the show. And so basically right now, you can get $25 tickets if you're a patron. And I sent that out earlier to all patrons. They're getting a passcode, which you will not hear right now because you're not a patron. And so patrons get in for $25 bucks, I believe. And then there's okay. Here's what it is now. It's $25 for general tickets, $75 for VIP, and it's only available to patrons through November 2nd. And then we'll open it up to the general public. Yeah, I just basically explained to you, we're gonna play games. It's gonna be very interactive. We're gonna have an incredibly fun show. I just did a live show a couple weeks ago with the Count the Dings people, and it was really fun. And we've already heard people are coming from across the country already. It's there's a lot of momentum, and many people are excited about it. And we're just really excited to meet all of you, guys. Are you ready? Are you ready for this live show?
Well, this will be my second time doing this.
Second time at the Bell House.
We did that.
This will be my third time at the Bell House, I guess.
It feels like a long time ago.
Only a little over.
Only a year and a half ago about that we did the Majority Report thing.
Yeah.
It seems longer.
It seems so much longer.
Yeah.
Wow.
But this is how we pass the time, so come out and join us.
Come out and join us. And as I say, I think we're going to cook up a bunch of ways. Like, we might even have listener contests, have people come up and this is going to be a very fun show. Griscom.
Yeah, I've been on a pretty strict diet of beef brisket and barbell set since we had it announced, so I'm very excited.
So that in case Wolf shows up.
Oh, yeah, definitely. If we're going to announce where it's going to be.
Wolf is going to be in studio here at the end of the month. Just a heads up for everybody. I actually saw Professor Wolf today. And he said if you use the word Althusser again, he's going to break your jaw.
He's been following me around, I think.
I think he has. He said that little prick should clean his room. So that's happening. We're incredibly excited about it. Now we do want to do the shout out, and then we're going to talk briefly about becoming a patron, and then we're going to call Woz. It's an unusual. We don't do double headers much anymore, but this was the time. So let's. Want to give him the shout out song for a second? If it's not easy, we can.
The shout out.
Perfect.
Creepy. Shout out. Weird. I think
That's
creepy.
It's sometimes nice to just give a little tease of it.
I think that's creepy. So people also, of course, in Brazil and everywhere else, they're going to be fighting. Jair Bolsonaro is wasting no time. He's talking about people should snitch on their teachers. The military has been present in the streets. There's various reports of violence against members of the left and the Workers' Party, and there's been assaults on teaching fascist curriculum in universities. This group of Bolsonaro supporters attempted to invade Brasilia University. They were kicked out by students, and we've got some raw footage of it from Brazil. Check it out. Shout out to them. So that's amazing.
How do you say Turning Points USA in Portuguese? The spy on your teachers thing, like that is just what Charlie Kirk has been, spending Foster Friese's money to do.
That's
to
exactly
basically create a snitch organization for left-wing professors.
Well, and it also makes the point very clear, though. There is a reason that why white ringers are so obsessed with the universities.
That's right.
And it's the first place that they come when they take power too, is they try to come after the student movements and they shut down student power. So something that it's very inspiring to see that immediate reaction of solidarity from the students there. And also, and also the Koch brothers Atlas Network has been very active across Latin America in feeding. This is why we have far-right regimes in Pinanera in Chile, Macri in Argentina. Again, these people think globally. And their mission is, whether it's branded in a more soft way or whether it's a more overtly fascistic and brutal one, is to eliminate democracy so that there can be uninterrupted capital concentration and capital flows amongst a small group of essentially multinationals across the planet. And that's why they need to synchronize and get rid of labor laws and get rid of environmental protections and exploit every avenue possible to concentrate capital and exploit opportunity. That's it. It's simple. They think in those terms. We must as well. And solidarity with Brasilia. So I'm actually texting. Let me. I'm gonna call Woz on my phone, see if he picks up, because we're coordinating. We can hear this. You guys can vamp for a second.
We got you.
I just can't coordinate everything over texting. Sometimes I'm texting because I'm actually organizing the show.
I think it'll be good if we can hear him pick up on the.
Yeah. Oh my God, Woz, why are you doing this to me? Oh, boo!
Man, we've been cursed, I think.
We have been cursed. What's going on?
Yeah.
Is it it's Jameson's fault for visiting?
Actually,
I like the gunshots.
We've been having good shows since Texas went on their winning streak and they lost last Saturday. So I think
is that what's going on?
I think that's
Texas?
the origin of the curse.
Propaganda. Manipulating liberal politics.
Yeah, throw up a screen for a second and do some drops. I got to figure this out.
Ask the moms.
Wow. That's kind of I don't know, that's amazing.
That's what he said, I think.
This is all coded.
We were a superpower.
We are now a hyper-powered.
Hey.
Welcome back to the Michael Brooks Show. Joining us now is my fellow woke bro. He's a member of the TMBS crew. He's co-host of Woke Bros with me, which now you guys can find on the Bomb feed on iTunes. He's also co-host of Count the Dings podcast and also Everything is Trash, which is a great podcast. He's like me, just podcasts all the time. Big Woz, Wosny Lambre. Woz, thanks for being here, man.
What's going on, Michael? Thanks for having me. How you guys doing?
I'm doing great. It's a full house in here. We've got a patron visiting us from California, a good friend of ours. We have the great Professor Harvey Kaye, and his family is here, so we're packed. And Matt is scurrying around, filling all the boards, and David Griscom is giving himself a bong hit.
About time Matt earned his check.
About time Matt earned his check. I like that. Exactly. Let me give you a little Perry Mason. Oh, he has my board turned down, so I can't give you sound effect. You want to tell people real quick about the live show we did, and also how people can find, because a lot of people now are fans of Woke Bros, and they've only been patrons of either Count the Dings or TMBS, but now they can find Woke Bros on a public feed too. You want to tell them about those things, man?
So I guess, man, so the show that we did in New York recently has now been our 5th or 6th live show. Our first one ended up being some just impromptu thing because everybody was in Oakland, California for the NBA Finals 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. No, not even 2 years ago. 1 year ago. Yeah, everybody happened to be in Oakland for the finals, and somebody, we were approached by somebody to be like, "Hey, what do you guys think about doing a live podcast?" And it was not something that had ever occurred to us before, but it ended up being a really big success, and we've been doing it since. And our last show in New York, we did about like 350, 400 people. And that was our biggest show yet, our biggest success. And Michael was on a panel with us. And he did what Michael does. He was funny, he was smart, he was engaging, and, everybody enjoyed themselves. The live show experience is just, you get to see, normally we're just coming into your headphones.
Right.
But you get to actually meet people, interact, and have a lot of fun. And as far as Bomb is concerned, Woke Bros will now be on the Bomb feed, which is just a Count the Dings show, which was just on the Count the Dings feed, and then now we've just spun it off on its own because it's become so successful. And so you can just look up BOMM in your iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, whichever one you prefer, and BOMM podcast, and you can find them. BOMB, it used to stand for Black Opinions Matter Monday, which has its own like stupid convoluted story how we came up with that name. But now I think it just means Black Opinions Matter most.
Well, I'm very proud of the fact that I like Jade and I are the only Caucasians allowed on that feed,
Right.
and we're
Right,
about to
Mike.
we're about to trash Beto O'Rourke, but I'm not mad at being in that position.
Well, that's the thing, Mike. You're our token,
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Proud
you
to
should
be.
wear that badge proudly.
I'm literally your native informant. Actually, you know what? Let's just, since I did the joke, I was going to go another place, but let's just do this quickly. We have this photo up. This is Beto O'Rourke at the barber shop, and you sent me this picture. You texted me in our group chat, and you were like, dude, we need to hit this. You know, I mean, obviously it goes out saying that we want everybody to go out in Texas and vote for, you know, suburban dad Obama. I guess Obama is suburban dad Obama. But at any rate, why did this picture? Well, first you had a reaction that was first of all about me when you saw this picture, which you can tell again because it was kind of funny. But then why did this grind your gear?
The idea that Beto O'Rourke is in a black barbershop, which is just like an institution in the black community, right? Where, like, I don't know if white people's barbershops are quite like ours, where it's like guys literally show up to the barbershop just to hang out.
Right.
Just to play cards, just to, you know, watch soccer matches or whatever the case may be. Like, this is an institution in our communities. And the fact that just the image of this guy, you know, in a black barbershop, holding a black baby, kissing the baby on the cheek. He's getting his hair cut, and I don't even know what you call the thing that the barber puts over you so no hair gets on your clothes.
Isn't that just like a robe? No?
Yeah, I guess I don't know. It's definitely got a special name, but I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, I don't know that.
The robe or whatever that they put over you to make sure hair doesn't get all over you while they're cutting you was a custom Gucci printed one. That was my favorite detail.
Are you serious?
Right,
That's dope.
Yeah,
I like that.
Go back.
I like that.
Go back and look at that picture. It's Gucci printed. And, you know, a lot of this has shades of Hillary Clinton hot sauce in her bag, right? Like,
well, that's my question. Is it really as bad as Hillary Clinton hot sauce in her bag? Okay.
No, but I think that's because this guy's better at selling it.
Right.
And that's what I was really texting you about. It's like, man, he is laying it on thick with the pandering here, but I respect him because he's genuinely selling this stuff. He's selling it as like, yo, I'm really down. I really get it. I'm really like in tune with everybody. Whereas Hillary Clinton just came off as very robotic. And so I was just thoroughly entertained by the guy, and I want to see him do well, obviously.
Right. No, so okay. So this is actually an example then of, we can all roll our eyes and sound a little silly, but, you know, fair enough.
And again, and we've talked about this at length about the way she ran her campaign. Some of the stuff, even for me as a black person, I always felt like came off very heavy-handed, right? Like when she had the mothers of the kids who got shot by police on the stage, I was like, I mean, I get it. Like, police aggressiveness as far as use of force is an issue that everybody cares about, and like, you know, we need people who aren't just gonna pay lip service to this shit. But like, man, that image just struck me as, I don't think people are gonna like that. You know,
welcome up, Shanakwa. Your son was shot. That was wrong. And
you know?
Well, I mean, but it wasn't that her problem though. It was like the opposite, because it was like very few people believe that she would really do anything about it, but she would go like my sense is like the winning formula is you really are intelligent and you calibrate how you present that issue, and then you have a really aggressive package that actually deals with it. I think the reason that Hillary Clinton rubbed everybody the wrong way was it would be like, this is Shaniqua, and her father was shot. and this is a bummer. And then like 3 months later, she's like, yeah, fuck that. Like, I'm not doing anything.
Of course,
right?
Of
like,
course.
yeah.
And it's like Beyonce concerts. It's like it's shit that like I'm just again, something like, especially with the cops, right, where those toss-up voters in those areas of the country that I've never been to and really don't care to, no disrespect.
I don't know. You went to college in
to the
Pennsylvania.
heartland. Say that again.
I
Mike?
said, I don't know. You went to college in Pennsylvania, did you not?
Yes, I did. For a brief while, I spent 2 years over there. And central Pennsylvania is definitely like, there's straight up rural people.
Get them.
Like straight up.
Get them, Was.
And then
I love how black people say rural people. They say it like, it's almost like pre-anthropological. It's just like there are these white people and they really live like that.
I don't want to call them uneducated whites. Is that better? That's what they say on TV.
No, I think actually I think the first one sounded better.
And you get a taste of everything. Like, there's educated white people in the suburbs, and there's very rural people, and like, you get a taste of all of that. And that's no disrespect, but I'm like, these people love the cops a lot, right? They love the cops, and so the optics of that is just like, man, you could have did that a lot more smoothly than she did, and that's how it was with a lot of it. So that's why Beto, to circle back to him, that's why he strikes me. He like strikes a chord within me, because I'm like, nah, he is a lot slicker at telling this stuff.
Well, because as I always say, like, I mean, I make the case every day for my godless commie politics, as you call it. But what people forget on a lot of these things is just some of this stuff really is just charisma or not. Like, Beto he's a charismatic dude. I mean, some of the stuff's just simple, right?
Yep.
Now, back to the live show for a second. You made fun of my footwear, and I shouldn't be outing myself like this. I had a pair of I did have a pair of Yeezys on, and I got an incredible deal on those Yeezys. They were, to say no to the deal I got would have been frankly insulting. And I also enjoyed the contradiction. Like, because I knew that you and Jade and everybody were going to be like, oh, well, here comes the Diggable Planets portion of the show. Like, here's Conscious Michael to like remind us about, how the planet is dying. And I was like, yeah, but I'm going to walk out in the least conscious footwear choice, the most MAGA, delusional, egomaniac footwear possible. And I'm just going to contradict. And I enjoy it. Because I had a lot of people come up to me after the show and be like, dude, that was great, but how can you be a socialist and wear Yeezys? And I was like, I'm doing it.
But that's the thing, though. That's the thing. If you already bought a pair of Yeezys before he dropped the Blexit merch on Saturday, like, what are you supposed to do? Like, you pay $270 retail, most people, for their Yeezys, and like, what? Just because this guy said something stupid, you shouldn't wear these sneakers anymore? No.
More on retail.
But I think, I think consciously it's hard to like wake up in the morning and put those sneakers on after the guy said slavery was a choice.
So right? What happened was, I was hoping, because I got this deal. I was like, all right, whatever, sure. And then there had been like a couple weeks where he was kind of shut up, and then all of a sudden. It was like he went on that whole Saturday Night Live, like, they're bullying me for my hat. Literally the day the box arrives. I was like, yeah, thanks, dude.
Yeah, and of course. And then he's hugging the president at a freaking press junket, basically kissing the ring.
Yeah.
It's unnerving, right? And especially because Kanye is so associated with footwear. Like, if the item was like a Kanye West toothbrush, that's personal.
We're going to reinvent brushing.
But I think if it was like an umbrella, say, if it was like an umbrella, it'd be like, okay. But like those sneakers are Kanye's cape.
The umbrella is like ice because it's fly, but it keeps you dry, like in style. And like that's why like I want to go to Versace. Like I want to know those people. Like that it's like it's creativity.
I see you're still workshopping your Kanye.
I think I have the
like
content, not the voice. But actually, you know what I usually do is I just do MLK Kanye because I like the mashup.
That would be a sick mashup.
You know, like that's the airplane one runs on hydrogen.
Yeah, because now we on that Larry Elder Kanye.
Right.
Like, man, I don't know.
You know, the last documented
know.
case of racism was in 1958, so you should stop complaining. But Woz, like Kanye's done, apparently.
It would seem.
So
that
we have
way.
a story that
It would seem
broke
way.
today.
And I've always heard people say that a lot of the times when he goes into cleanup mode and like actually try to redeem his public image, it's because the sneakers aren't moving as well as they usually do. And there's an indication from what I've heard that this weekend he dropped a new sneaker and they didn't do well.
Well, of course they didn't do well.
Who
is it? I mean, sneakers are not a Republican thing. I'm sorry. Like I get like a one level sneakers are everybody thing, but like hype beast culture is not Republican. I remember I interviewed a hype beast guy once, right? Very nice dude, and I'm not trying to drag him, but we brought up like I get that it's no politics, but we are in the Trump era, and everything that you guys have feed your site on is international travel, rap, and sneakers. Do you have anything to say about anything? And he's like, no, we just keep it clean with the culture. I was like, okay, good luck with that.
I mean, that's just, that's, but again, like these guys are running an online magazine essentially, and they're going to cover like, they know what they got to do to get clicks. Like, Kanye West showed off his autographed MAGA hat. Like, they're going to put that on the site. Now, are they going to have commentary around the actual issue itself? No, they're just going to report that news. They're rolling all of this, as far as the sneaker blogs and all of that. It's not even that. But I think, literally Kanye sneakers didn't perform well. And I'm pretty sure people got in his ear and was like, dude, this shit that you're doing is pissing people off. Like, in a ridiculous way.
So
like,
he might have found an
So-
opportunity to get his way out of this, because I didn't know about this. This apparently was called Blexit, and it's of course black exit from the Democratic Party. Naturally, Woz, you've run this idea by me many times.
Yeah,
And,
right.
And what it is, and apparently these shirts are being sold at, was it Trump's Young Leadership event with black?
They were handed out at Trump's Young Black Leaders Summit, the Turning Points USA thing.
Right. And
with Candace Owens.
And Candace Owens. And so this, I don't know who Nikki Schwab is, but
she's a New York Post journalist.
Okay, she's a New York Post. So she tweets, Candace Owens designed these, quote, Blexit T-shirts for at Candace Owens' new Blexit movement, and they were handed out at the Young Black Leaders 2018, which is the Turning Points USA bullshit with Trump. Okay, so that's one tweet. Second tweet, as the narrative moves on, this is very funny. Then it's Kanye designs Blexit. It's complex. Kanye designs Blexit shirts to encourage black people to leave the Democratic Party. And it's now this is from Complex, and the story is basically that Kanye has continued his love affair with Trump. As it was reported, the rapper has lent his talents as a fashion designer to a campaign that is encouraging black people to exit the Democratic Party. On Saturday, October 27th, Turning Point USA's Young Black Leadership Summit, Kanye revealed his shirt design and logo for Blexit, a movement that urges black people to exit the political party that they are most aligned with. These shirts which bear the design Blexit and We Free, are another act of solidarity with conservative ideologues and his self-proclaimed quote-unquote brother, President Donald Trump. All right, yeah, this article is not helping move sneakers. Then we go to Candace Owens. Blexit is about stories so many black people who have awakened who have awakened to themselves to the possibilities of our futures as Americans. The press is trying to use Kanye's name to create drama and further divisiveness, which is wrong. Here is a statement of clarity from me. So what's going on here? What's confusing? I thought that they had a conference. Kanye designed a shirt. What's the problem? Matt, can you read the statement that Candace Owens just put out?
Yeah, so Candace Owens, I believe this was yesterday, she writes, today the press is trying to conflate Kanye West with Blexit to get website clicks. So allow me to clarify my earlier statement. I said on stage that my friend and fellow superhero, it doesn't mention who this superhero is, helped me design the X for Blexit. This may shock the world, but Ye is a world-renowned designer. Everyone who knows him asks him for advice on design. Ye supports various people in different regards because at the end of the day, his message is about unity and love. He supports Colin Kaepernick. He supports Amari Enya. He said he loves Hillary Clinton. He said he loves Donald Trump. Blexit is a project that is mine entirely. I am blessed that Ye introduced me to a designer who, despite having totally different political beliefs than me, helped me craft some beautiful letters that I used on the Blexit caps. And then she finishes it. The insinuation that Kanye is now the author of my political movement is pointedly wrong and dishonest. Let's not politicize love.
Okay. So,
Jesus Christ.
All right, now, Waz, are you ready for it? Because you might be able to be an unapologetic Ye stan again, because all of that nonsense and all of that bullshit led to this tweet, and of course, I think probably more to the point, lack of moving units and sneakers. Ye tweeted this out just a short while ago, like really just only a couple hours ago. This is from Ye. I introduced Candace to the person who made the logo, and they didn't want their name on it, so she used mine. I never wanted any association with Blexit. I have nothing, probably Brexit either. I never wanted any association with Blexit. I have nothing to do with it. And then my eyes are now open, and I now realize I've been used to spread messages I don't believe in. I'm distancing myself from politics and completely focusing on being creative. 3 exclamation points. I just got to say, not only did this motherfucker meet with Donald Trump and kiss the ring, within 48 hours, he was meeting with Jonas Museveni, who's the dictator of Uganda, and talking about building a Wakanda theme park there. I just got to add that to the mix. But Waz, are you back in your Kanye bag? Is this enough?
No. The cat's off the bag, man. The hugging him, like Samuel L. Jackson's character in Django, right? Like doing that in front of all of those people, like literally in front of the world, and like literally kissing the man's ring. Like that was, to me, that's irredeemable, right? And I think Kanye, what he exposes, because when he first went on his, I don't care, MAGA, I could be apolitical, blah, blah, blah. I don't know why black people think they should be democratic, blah, blah, blah. He just shows you that he doesn't actually engage with this stuff, right? Because,
Right.
you know, a lot of people sit around in their crib or whatever smoking weed, and they come up with these little cockamamie ideas like, man, all these black people, they're voting Democratic. They're all sheeple. Like, without ever actually, like, investigating why themselves. Just like, no, people think these people keep voting Democrat. Man, what if they just went Republican? I bet it would just work out so great for them. It's like, no, dude, like, there's a reason for this stuff. There's a reason, people who, like Candace Owens, are the only people that black people that Republicans openly love and embrace. Like, people say, black people, this is all your fault. Like, you
Right.
say that, if you're a black person who is willing to say that in public, Republicans will love you forever. It's not very complicated. And so when Kanye comes out and says slavery was a choice, Republicans are like, yes. Yes. Like that Jack Nicholson.
The Jack Nicholson
gift
meme.
That everybody.
Yeah. Right.
So that's all this is. Oh, I was used misled about supporting things that I don't actually believe in. It's like, duh, dude, because you were just talking. You were just sounding stupid.
We still
But
need
whatever,
to do our
that's
TV
Kanye.
show, Woz. We still
But
need
also-
to do it, man.
Yeah,
Hey,
man,
Woz,
I
what's
agree
up with
with you,
black
man.
on black crime? Take the fuck off, man.
Black on black
Yeah.
crime, pull your pants up,
Right.
father your sons. You know the.
I just
you
think
know-
if you got out of your
you know-
victim mentality, our podcast numbers would double.
Oh my God! What we would be? Oh my Lord! If we wanted to turn heel, if we really wanted to turn heel and turn our backs
Yeah.
on the libtards, woo!
The
do your thing,
libtards.
bro.
That's the best one. All right. So Kanye's irredeemable. We only have a few minutes left, but I do want to play this clip because there was some other related news to another whack-ass rapper that you stand for.
Oh wow!
Woz.
Here we go.
No, I'm just playing. I've been easing up on Drake, to be honest with you, because I have finally succumbed to the fact that, like, even that Travis Scott song where he takes like with the 3 beats, yeah, right, and he takes the Xan and goes to sleep. I find myself listening to it, so at a certain point I've got to admit partial defeat. But
Okay, welcome to America.
whatever. I will be the Malcolm X of American pop music. Like, I don't want part of your America. But Pusha T did absolutely body Drake. And this clip, which comes from the Joe Budden show, we're going to do this in the last couple of minutes. Joe Budden, I would recommend to everybody. I'm incredibly impressed by his skills as a talk show host, and Rory and Maul and that whole show. It's obviously pop and rap focused, but it's got innate qualities as a show if you're just interested in talent in broadcasting. And there's been a lot of questions because if you'll recall, part of what made this diss so devastating was that he revealed that Drake had an illegitimate child, and he also made a pretty nasty line about Drake's writing partner who had MS. And in this clip, has MS. We're going to connect the dots. This is Joe Budden and Pusha T.
And back to the show and just addressing those things.
Please.
The information came from 40.
That's
Didn't
the
come
guy
from
with
Kanye.
MS.
At all.
Okay.
40 is sleeping with a woman who begins to, he talks to her daily, 5-6 hours a day.
Oh, she must have a great personality.
Yeah, bruh. Come on. Listen, talks to a woman 5-6 hours a day, provides opportunity for her.
Provides opportunity
for
He's a great guy.
and ultimately speaks about how he's disgruntled about certain things, notoriety and things involving Drake and his career, so on and so forth.
To this young lady.
Yes. With that also came the fact that Drake has a child. With that also came the trip that everybody took to go see the child and bring them gifts and all of this information.
So the reason this gossip is relevant is because Kanye did not give Pusha this information,
Yeah,
and it
really.
came from Drake's own camp.
Right.
Was
Right. Yeah. Right. Really. Really. So this is why I love Pusha T so much. Because one, let me just first and foremost tell you guys, he's lying, right? The reason why it's so genius because it's like, no, it wasn't Kanye. It was literally your closest friend,
right,
in the world,
Brilliant.
dined you out and set you up to get killed by Pusha T. And it's just like it's the equivalent of saying the butler did it. That's what he's doing. And the great tell is that he said that 40 is pissed off about a lack of notoriety and love or respect or whatever. And like anybody who knows anything about 40 knows and how rap producing works. Like, for instance, the Nonstop song or Look Alive, like these two big records that Drake put out last year. The heavy Memphis, Tennessee influences. That kid, he's out of here. His phone won't stop ringing, right? Like the idea that 40 has been crafting songs for Drake since the beginning, the biggest act in the game, that he's not getting notoriety. He's doing it on purpose. He's like a really private person. He hasn't worked with anybody. If that's your goal, once you have a couple of hits, you have your pick of whoever. I'm talking about Beyonce, which 40s worked with before, Rihanna, Bruno Mars, whoever you want. You make records that go this far throughout the world, like you're going to be able to work with who you want. So this idea that 40's is mad that he's not getting the love and respect and notoriety, like that's not how it works for a producer who's made hits. Like you have to go out of your way to not get that type of recognition, love, oversaturation of yourself. But it's like, how do you respond, right? It's just like,
right.
I'm just going to say the most nastiest.
It's just Machiavellian as hell. Yes. Oh, I love it. I love Pusha T.
It wasn't
He's a bastard.
Kanye.
He's such a bastard. He's so slick. Like Joe Budden in the same interview said that Pusha T had serial killer tendencies.
when he even talked about Maverick, and he disparaged the way the questions were teed up. He was like, look at all these leading questions. That was disgusting moderation right there. He came at Maverick Carter's ability to moderate a conversation. Like dude, he is so hilarious. Like because I didn't watch it. Of course, I read the press clippings first, and I was like, really, Pusha? It was 40.
It was the Butler did it.
The Butler did it. That's what he just came up with, bro. Which is great. That was like Sebastian Gorka, if he wants Art of War on his Mustang, should learn from Pusha T. Waz, hopefully next week I'll get Pusha T on to respond to your slander. But Waz, we got a wrap, man, but always, it's a pleasure. I'm also hoping, I don't know, I said to people it's only a possibility, but that maybe there's a chance you're coming to the TMBS live show on February 1st at the Bell House in Brooklyn. And everybody listen to all of Waz's shows. Listen, of course, to Woke Bros. And I'm looking forward to my first guest appearance on Everything is Trash. I love that show. Listen, if or when you're in LA, we will absolutely make that happen.
I love that show. I love what you guys are doing with that. All right, man.
Yeah.
Thank you, Waz. Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
All
Bye.
Right. Love you, man. Bye. All right, guys. So what we're going to do is Griscom and Matt's segments are going to be weaved into the broader conversation with our esteemed guest, who's going to join us in just a moment. We're going to take a brief break. And we're going to come back with the great, the one, the only, Harvey Kaye. We'll be back in about 30 seconds. Welcome back to the Michael Brooks Show. The whole crew is here, and joining us is our friend, our mentor and colleague, Professor Harvey J. Harvey, thanks for being here.
Oh, it was a blast.
It's so fun to have you back.
As I said to you before, I was thinking Woz was going to be with us here in studio.
Woz is going to be here sometime, and I will make that meeting happen.
Tell him as he flies east on the charter jet to pick me up in Green Bay.
I will take that LeBron check and get Harvey in the private jet, you bastard. I hope you hear that, Woz. And what we'll do when we have you both in studios, I'm going to have Woz break down how FDR responded to Huey Long, and you're going to break down the Pusha T interview with Joe Budden.
Yeah, I don't even
We're
know
going to do
who
a
the guy is.
little cross. Do you know who one of them is? Tell us about the hat, man. Were you in Brooklyn when the Dodgers were playing in Brooklyn?
So
what? And
my
is he close enough to the mic first?
Am I close enough? Sorry, I move around.
Talk about the Dodgers in Brooklyn. We want to hear this.
Okay, my family's a Brooklyn family. Both sets of grandparents, both parents. My father went to Thomas Jefferson High School. My mother went to Tilden, and we spend a lot of time in Brooklyn. But I actually grew up on the other side of the Hudson River, except for a while in Queens. But it's interesting now. I mean, so let me say, my mother's father was very close to the Brooklyn Dodger organization, not the owners, but there were names that you may not know of, but Charlie Dressen, who was the manager. Well, everybody knows Jackie Robinson, Gil Hodges, Duke Snyder,
Sure.
Pee Wee Reese.
How was she close to them? What was the
my
connection?
grandfather? My grandfather was really good friends with Charlie Dressen, another fellow who came and went from the Dodger organization, Leo DeRocher. Yeah, that name doesn't mean
I
anything
don't
to
know
you?
that name.
Okay, very
Yeah.
big name in baseball back in the 40s, 50s.
Okay.
I mean, big name. And but he also coached, I think, for the Giants. I mean, managed the Giants, that kind of thing. So these were the kind of folks who could have stopped by the house at not when I was there, but when my mother was.
That's great.
That
sounds great.
In the 40s. So I remember as a boy, my grandfather, whenever I was with him in Brooklyn for days at a time, weeks, whatever, we would go to Ebbets Field. So usually on the third base line. And I sat in the Ebbets Field dugout.
Seat.
And I met Hodges and Robbins. I met them all as a little boy.
What were they like? What was Jackie Robinson like?
Bigger than I was.
Bigger.
How did I know? I mean, I was like 7, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was a little boy.
Yeah.
And but I actually, you want to hear a baseball story?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes, please.
So,
who are you rooting for now, though? Who's your team now?
Well, this is part of the story.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, the Dodgers left Brooklyn after the '57 season, and my grandfather was devastated. In fact, everyone in the family was devastated. And not long after that, I wrote off baseball. I wrote an article for a baseball magazine, which ended up creating it was called the Elysian Fields Quarterly, and they
sounds very George Willish.
Well, in fact, but the editor,
Yeah.
on the contrary, the editor so liked my article, which you'll see in a moment, was titled "All That Is Solid Melts into Air." Right? So I talked about how as a kid, I mean, basically I started to wonder
Marx is never far away.
I started to wonder
love
if,
it.
in fact, my socialist instincts were cultivated by the Dodgers leaving Brooklyn. Because how could you do that?
Right.
I mean, how do you do that?
Raw capital calculation.
Exactly.
Right.
So,
right.
So I became a football fan pretty early on. And oddly enough...
Which is a much more ethical sport.
Oh,
it's more sort of humane capitalism
Absolutely.
than baseball, yeah.
And in fact, living in the New York area, my very first professional football game was at Yankee Stadium. And I hated any team that played in Yankee Stadium. And the Giants, New York Giants, played in Yankee Stadium all those
so
years.
you're Jets guy.
And the first team that I saw play the Giants was the Green Bay Packers.
And this is before...
It was way back. We're talking this is like when I was 10 years old.
And did you know, well, obviously not when you were 10, but did you, and then later on, of course, Green Bay is owned different. Green Bay actually has a great ownership
We have a
system.
fan-based ownership.
Right.
Right. And I've written about that too. I can send you a link sometime.
Talk about that a little bit. Tell people
let me
who
just
don't.
finish
I'm sure a lot of people know.
Let me tell you the Dodgers story first.
Yeah,
okay?
please.
So, all my friends out in Jersey were families from the Bronx. So all the kids were Yankee fans. And at the strip mall around the corner from where we lived, there was a candy store, five and dime kind of place as well. And we would all buy Topps, bubble gum, and the baseball cards. And, you get a deck of cards.
They still had Topps baseball cards when I was a kid.
Yeah, no, I mean, and this is great. And what we did is, you had a deck, and you carried the deck wherever you went. We didn't think in terms of monetary value. It was more like another kind of aesthetic.
But did you trade them?
We did.
Okay, yeah.
But we also played games with them. So, and one of the games, there was a game where you could just turn over the card and the higher batting average won. The pitchers were pulled out. But the other one was a kind of flipping towards a wall. I can't remember what it was called. Maybe it was called flip. And so around the corner near the store was this blank wall. And all the kids from the diverse neighborhoods that shop there, we would line up and we'd pitch it. And the idea is the closest to the wall won the cards that were laid out.
Won the whole pot.
The whole pot. And this one particular round, and by the way, what I'm telling you is an absolutely true story. It's absolutely true. So I flipped the card.
On my board, Matt. This is an absolutely true story, and I want to give a Perry Mason.
Okay.
Yes.
The card.
He's like, I don't even have headphones.
The card
on.
was standing like this against the wall.
Yeah.
And I go over and I pick up all the cards. And my buddies come around me, Hey, what did you win? What did you win? And we're going through the cards, and I won the Mickey Mantle card.
Do you still have the Mickey Mantle card?
The story's not over.
All right. I'm sorry.
It happened to be an off day for the Yankees in the sense that they weren't playing. And by the way, that particular summer, Mantle lived in one of the other neighborhoods that shopped at this area. And he and his family arrived to do some food shopping.
Okay.
And my buddies said, hey, you can get Mickey's signature.
Yes.
Remember, I'm a ruined Brooklyn Dodgers fan, or maybe they were still in Brooklyn at that moment.
You hate the Yankees.
I despised the Yankees.
Okay. I'm getting the tribalism.
I took the card, looked at my buddies, and I ripped it up.
Oh my God.
It's an absolutely true story.
Dude.
Years later, I went back to look for the card. No, so
that's so brutal.
So anyhow, I wrote this piece for that magazine, and I said, I learned how to be a socialist early on when the Dodgers left, or the imperative of socialism, you might say, and then we titled it "All That Is Solid Melts into Air."
And I'm wondering, is there? Tell me if I'm going afield here, but is there maybe also some connection with your tribal loyalty to the Democratic Party as well? In terms of get on the team, Bernie.
My tribal loyalty.
Well, because that's pretty tribal. You're a Yankee. I'm going to rip your card up. So get on the right team, man.
Yeah, well,
there are no sidelines.
Well, nobody in my family would have ever considered voting Republican.
Well, of course not.
Okay, my grandfather, who was a trial lawyer and lived here in the city, used to tell us that he would always vote twice.
What? How
he'd vote for Democrat, Brooklyn and Manhattan.
Right.
He'd vote
yeah. We need a lot more of this. Yes.
And so he would vote. I don't remember which was Democrat. For a while, once upon a time, he voted some a left party. Then he was voting liberal and Democrat. But the point was, he used to say. So when people say vote early and often, he said, guaranteed. So there you go. Okay.
We need to bring that back.
Yeah,
I'm
but
just
now
kidding.
that
I'm
we're
not-
back to
I'm not
Brooklyn. Now here I am.
claiming that.
So
Yes.
now I'm 68. No, I turned 69 a couple of weeks ago.
Looking
69
very healthy.
Thank
Happy
you.
birthday.
69 years old.
Bringing
So,
some vigor to the show,
okay,
finally.
Thank you. So
Yes.
So here I am back in Brooklyn. In fact, we're staying in Brooklyn, and we're staying only like, what would you say, not even half a mile from where my grandparents lived on Eastern Parkway,
that's so funny.
back in the 1950s into the very early 60s, and it just it was amazing. So we set out, and by the way, it was at my grandparents' apartment. Now I'll give you another spin on this, where I met Thomas Paine.
I was going to say, because we
I did
talked
tell you that, right?
because we did the illicit history of Thomas Paine, the American radical.
Yeah.
And you talked about discovering
Right,
that.
and
and it's
right.
interesting the word choice you made, because you really did meet him. I
Yeah,
remember when you first
right.
said that, I noticed that. I was like, oh, it's interesting the way you're personifying it.
Yeah.
But then you elaborated on it.
Yeah,
You
no,
really
it was
did- yeah.
really something.
Yeah,
So to
yeah,
be
yeah.
back in Brooklyn, I mean, I don't have the map down again in my head, but it's great. I mean, it's extraordinary.
Tell us a little bit about. I want to weave a couple of threads here. I want to get to Thomas Paine, but I also want to play. Put on your headphones if you
Okay.
can, because I do want to play this clip now. You sent me a quote recently, which I'm remiss. I don't have in front of me.
Oh, I got it over here in
But
case
yeah,
you
if
need
you-
it.
oh great. Yeah, maybe I would. Maybe you could read it after we play it, because I this is part of the dialectic I'm working on, because on one hand, I think that the left across the board, whether we're talking social democratic or more radical, whatever, a big part of this show is getting a hell of a lot more serious about power and understanding power and having an actual map to getting power. I'm not interested in protesting. I'm not interested in morally, calling out the just horrific atrocities of this world. I want to change it. I want to do, and so I want this much more hard-headed, strategic, and materially grounded way of looking at the world. And then conversely, I do think, and I think of the Che quote, where he talks about all revolutionaries are guided by a deep sense of love.
Yeah.
And I do think that we actually need to not shy from that kind of word, that kind of language, because each of us in our own very fallible and failing and egotistical ways, I think if you have this draw to this kind of politics, though, you do have some of that kind of global empathy, that some of that real energy to you, and that's the dialectic, power and love. And I just so happened to find, I had never seen this clip before, actually, but MLK back in the 60s putting this together in a very powerful way. And I want to do this, and then maybe you could read the quote.
Yeah.
But first we'll play this sound. It really hit me the other day when I saw it.
What happened is that some of our philosophers got off base. And one of the great problems of history is that the concepts of love and power have usually been contrasted as opposites, polar opposites. So that love is identified with a resignation of power, and power with a denial of love. It was this misinterpretation that caused the philosopher Nietzsche, who was the philosopher of the will to power, to reject the Christian concept of love. It was the same misinterpretation which induced Christian theologians to reject Nietzsche's philosophy of the will to power in the name of the Christian idea of love. Now, we got to get this thing right. What is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and that love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best. Power at its best is love, implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is love correcting everything that stands against love.
I love that. And maybe I want your reactions to that, but maybe you could also read the quote as well that I kind of wanted to couple with that you just happened to send me the other day.
Yeah, I was reading. I wish I could remember the title of the book. I've got 3 books I'm reading at the same time. But anyhow, so I was reading, and in this book, this quote appeared. And I went searching for where the quote came from, because it wasn't very well referenced. So, and I discovered this obituary of Michael Harrington, from
founder of DSA.
DSA, right? Who was still very much alive when I first joined DSA, and it really is a remarkable quote. And this is in his book Fragments of a Century. And I won't go through the whole story of it, but I'll read the quote. "It was as a socialist, and because I was a socialist, that I fell in love with America. In saying that, I'm not indulging in romantic nostalgia about youthful days on the road, but rather underlining a crucial political truth. If the left wants to change this country because it hates it, then the people will never listen to the left, and the people will be right. To be a socialist, to be a Marxist, is to make an act of faith, of love even, toward this land. It is to sense the seed beneath the snow, to see beneath the veneer of corruption and meanness and the commercialization of human relationships, men and women capable of controlling their own destinies. To be a radical is, in the best and only decent sense of the word, patriotic." And I when I read that, I immediately saw my own mouth speaking.
Yes.
I heard myself speaking.
Definitely.
And I'll relate some related things if I can remember them all as I spin this out.
Yeah, please.
One of them is when I was in grad school in Louisiana State University for the PhD. And I was in Baton Rouge, okay, right.
Got
and I went from London School of Economics to Louisiana State University.
That is quite a contrast.
By way of Wall Street, which is a story unto itself as well.
Post-game.
Right.
Become a
Okay.
Patreon, patreon.com/TMBS.
And we were in this
we didn't
seminar.
do the pitch tonight.
And we were talking about, and my field, I dealt with peasant studies. That was my area.
Right.
Landlord and peasant relations, the exploitation and struggles against it. And one of my graduate school friends, a really good friend, who was not a Latin Americanist, but an Americanist, who actually was from Louisiana and was working on power relations in Louisiana as his field. And we were talking about what Americans could ever possibly do. Okay. And he said, well, the first thing we got to do is we have to worry about taking power here. Okay. Not doing good anywhere else. Now, he didn't say it as an isolationist thing. What he meant was the best, and this has been with me obviously all these years, good 40 years now. And what he meant by that, he explained, was that the best thing the American left could do was to get it together and secure power.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And because given the place of the United States in the world, this would enable the left globally. That was his position.
I think that I have a friend of mine who has been, he's going through hell because he's Brazilian. And he's somebody who's certainly helped shape part of the reason that we've done such good coverage of this. And he said to me, I forget the context, but he said, I honestly think if you guys could pull off electing Bernie Sanders, there could be nothing more helpful.
Yeah.
Just because of how that might, keyword might, there's still a lot of pushback, obviously. But in the current dynamic of power, and I'm always trying to play with that, because on one hand I think Americans, including the left, need to be infinitely more globalized and recognize that we live in a highly global world, and we need to learn from many different traditions, and we need to recognize that, but also partially because this is part of America and a part of America that I love, that America really truly is a global country. And all of the currents of every part of the planet come here and flow back out. And we focus on the evil, exploitative dimension through the military and through the empire and through capital. But there's also the amazing and positive, realities of cultures feeding in and out of the United States in a way and a dynamism that's completely unparalleled on the planet, objectively. And so, but at the same time, just from a raw perspective of power relations, yes. If the left could get it together here, that would have some pretty big implications.
And you know that I have a radical, progressive, democratic, small d, democratic conception of American exceptionalism.
Right.
Okay.
This one I'm a little bit less on board with.
I know that.
I always want to hear more. Yes.
I know that.
Yeah.
And I don't need you on board to my theory.
Right. No, but I want to hear it again.
Okay.
Because I like
bring
when
me
this,
bring me back to it, because right now I just want to say, but it's close to this idea. In fact, the president who put it best was Abraham Lincoln, the last best hope of earth. And I do believe that. I really do. And No, and so my understanding of American exceptionalism has nothing to do with divinely ordained,
right,
or even for that matter, environmentally ordained. In terms of like the land we took, right,
right.
But actually has to do with the fact that in my work, this came to me sort of in a historical moment. Between Thomas Paine, the work I did on Thomas Paine and American radicalism, and that book on Thomas Paine and the Promise of America was my love letter to America. I've always said that. And then my work on not on FDR alone, but The Greatest Generation and its legacy, the Four Freedoms.
Right.
And that's my love letter to my parents' generation. That what I came on was the fact that when push comes to shove, when the shit hits the fan, if we do it right, the way we've transcended the fundamental crises of the Revolution, the Civil War, the Great Depression, and World War II, right? These were the most threatening of crises. The way we transcend them, and this is something I don't think anyone quite realizes, is that we actually, with all of the faults and failings, we didn't end slavery, okay? We fell into a post-Reconstruction nightmare of Jim Crow. All of that's true. The fact is that the way in which we transcended the crises of those given years was we actually figured out, by way of the struggles from below, to make America freer, more equal, and more democratic. And I can hear the cynicism out there. Oh, but look what it doesn't fucking matter what we didn't do. What matters first is what we did do. And then what we didn't do is the stuff that we can then concern ourselves with. But we shouldn't lose touch with the fact that at its best, we've transcended the crisis. We've beaten the enemy by making America more democratic. And I can lay that history out for you if you'd like at some point, or when I come next time, whatever you'd like.
I mean, there's some way in which I think part of that is objectively true. I mean, I don't think there's a single time you're talking about, even with the unbelievable contradictions built into it, that isn't true on some level, that there has been some type of expansion. I guess... Yeah, go ahead, and then I'll respond.
Okay. I mean...
Before I go back to explaining why we should go out and burn a flag.
For all of its failings, we created it. Americans created, as a consequence of the arguments of Paine and the artisans and the farmers and the slaves and others who rose up, however much some were betrayed. The fact is that we did create the makings of a small d democratic republic. A white man's democratic republic,
right?
But an unprecedented white man's democratic republic. There was no precedent like that,
right?
Before that.
Well, is there? I mean,
and then I'm sorry. Let me take you just through, and then don't hesitate to ask. Okay.
Yeah.
Then the Civil War, the way in which we fundamentally won the Civil War is the degree to which Lincoln, propelled by slaves abandoning their plantations, swarming into Union camps, enabled Lincoln to sign the Emancipation Proclamation. And ultimately, by the end of the Civil War, a good 250,000, 250,000 of the Union troops were African Americans, either from free Northern blacks or slaves.
And that also leads, I just going to need to add now, that also leads to things that people need to be I think it's important to be aware of, because I think on one hand, if you read Carol Anderson, who I think is one of the most important scholars in the States right now, there's no doubt that specifically racial backlash and sort of right-wing sort of counter-revolutions are a continuity in American history, and that just frankly racism is one of the main impediments that we've had. It maybe is the impediment, I would argue, along with capital. But that being said, to feed the contrasting history that people should also be aware of, not because it whitewashes anything or corrects anything, but just because it adds to complexity. Not only did that happen in the context of Civil War, there was that brief period in Reconstruction that people should look at examples like the Free State of Jones as an example. Like, that's an incredible cross-racial group of people that founded a free state outside of both imperial interests, both North and South, and said, no matter what your race, you should be able to farm and own your own land, and we shouldn't be fighting a war on behalf of any other landlord. There was also in Wilmington, North Carolina, there was a multiracial party that governed the city in a progressive way that was protected by Union troops. When the Union troops pulled out, there was a right-wing, corporate-backed white supremacist coup. Right. And that's America. And I think it's important because I think on one hand, people need to get that the forces we're dealing with today of capital and white supremacy are in the DNA of this country. And conversely, people, I think, on the other hand, who have emphasized rightly the historical crimes of America need to also remember that even like the scholarship of the internal wars in the South, of people getting some working class Southern people being like, wait a second, why the hell would I fight for some plantation owner? I should be building a line. That existed too. This is all real.
I think there's a.
Yes.
I actually think there's a radical, a small r, small I, radical imperative in American life.
Yeah.
Okay. But what happens is, not what happens. What has happened is the Democratic Party for so many years, so many decades, didn't just turn their back on that imperative. They participated in the suppression of that imperative.
Right.
Okay. And in fact, for all of my criticisms of Bernie Sanders, what Bernie Sanders revealed, his campaign revealed, was the degree to which that radical imperative was live. And I mean, seriously, I'm out in Wisconsin, as you know, and young people. I mean, he won Wisconsin.
Yep.
He won Wisconsin, and
he won it pretty comfortably, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And in fact, if he had been the candidate,
he would have
beaten
Wisconsin,
Trump.
No doubt.
He would have beaten Trump. I mean,
Yes.
I had students telling me they came from families where their parents would have voted for Bernie, wouldn't vote for Hillary, but because they wanted action.
Right.
They wanted some kind of action on the inequality, the devastation, and all the things that came with it. So, anyhow, I mean, I think that there is this radical imperative, and just think about the lead up between 2012 to 2016. You know, I mean, the movements that emerged, Black Lives Matter, the Fight for 15, Occupy, the Wisconsin Rising, which actually is
the Wisconsin Rising is another big,
right?
Yeah.
You know, by the way, that fellow who wrote the book, The Fall of Wisconsin, I don't know if you've had him on the Majority Report or he lives here in Brooklyn. You might want to think about
who.
I don't remember his name, but we've had him on.
Dan Kaufman.
Yeah.
Oh, we did have him on. Excuse
You
me.
did.
Yeah, we had him
Okay.
on Majority Report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember that name.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting at is there was this percolation movement, and by the way, on those grounds, I would make an argument, and you'll get a kick if off air we can talk about where this comes from, but that's not the point. I think we need some kind of. It's going to take a hell of an articulation. It's going to take the willingness to listen and not listen to each other as victims, but to listen to each other as active makers of history. We're going to have to figure out some way to create some kind of united front on the left. The rise of this fascism that we see, which is not exactly Central European fascism, obviously, but it's its own new historic brand of fascism.
Yeah.
We cannot stand as half a dozen different currents on the left.
No, there needs to be there needs to be a synchronized effort. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But I do want, what we're going to do is we're going to do a couple of things briefly. Matt and David each have, as you know, because you're a regular listener and viewer, they have their own segments. So we're going to do those segments, but you're going to be part of it, obviously. But before we do that, and then we're going to go to the post game. Before we do that, I have my own thoughts about this American exceptionalism conversation, which maybe we'll get to in the postgame. But I want to throw to my economist, David Griscom, who will have his own thoughts on this exceptionalism talk.
Oh.
I'm not trying to stoke trouble here. I'm actually just genuinely interested in your response to this. Like, how do you take this on, especially the historical complexities of this? That some of this stuff is,
Well, I mean, I think the question when you're talking about the United States is that you have to see it from two different sides, right? There's the United States, which is the only country that I've ever known. I was born in Texas, and I've moved around. I've lived actually in very many places.
You said
in
that
this
like
country.
Alex Jones, by the way. So I was born in Texas.
I thought that was a separate country.
Yeah.
Well, some people are thinking.
Look at how quickly Harvey gets to coastal liberalism. It's like, no, America's special. Texas needs to get the fuck out of here. Yeah.
And then there's the point of like how other folks experience the United States,
Right.
which is like, it's incredible sometimes when you read history to realize just how many tentacles the United States foreign policy has had across the world, and in overthrowing democratic movements, left movements.
Yep.
But I think that there's a point, and I agree with Harvey to this extent, where I spend a lot of times with the radical left circles, right? I am like very much like a Texan. Like I watch football every Saturday. I love barbecue.
I must be Texan.
We call him the Ho Chi Minh of honky tonk.
Yeah, and I love Willie Nelson. But I read my Marx.
We all love Willie Nelson. I mean,
yeah,
there's nothing special
that's one
about
thing
that.
that's very important.
Yeah,
as
if you don't love Willie Nelson, to me, Willie Nelson.
Well, people were trying to
that.
come at Willie because of his Beto.
Shut up.
Stuff, and it's just like nobody, like at this point, it's like no one expected anything different from Willie. What do you think? Willie's going to be a Trump guy?
Well, also, yeah. Well, and by the way, I think Willie's almost at Bob Marley level.
Oh,
like if you don't like Bob Marley, there's something wrong with you.
Snoop Dogg. He does albums with Snoop Dogg.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, he's great.
But I mean, the point is that there's like these two currents of the United States, right? And something that I know from my experience is that there is like America, the empire, which is like the government. These are the people who are in control of the society, and then there's the people in the society. And I think a lot of times on the left, people have a difficult time separating those two things, right? Because the fact is that if you want to create any different future in this country, in the world, you have to be able to deal with Americans, obviously, right? We're dealing in this country. So you can't deny the idea of being somebody who comes from this culture or this identity. Like the point is like if you really want to love, the United States or America or whatever we want to call it, is to change
it's to uproot all of these systems.
Yeah, it's to actually make people free, and it's something that's very important to me. Something that especially when I moved from the South to the North, it was something I had a difficult time with that articulation because a lot of people, obviously the South is fairly regressive and like there's a lot of racism and there's things like that. But also I know plenty of wonderful, very loving, incredible people. And
there's also a hell of a lot of racism here.
No, exactly.
Right. That's another subtext of all of that dismissal.
And that was a struggle for me that took me a long time to sort of recognize. Right. It's like, well, I left the South because I had to leave because I just couldn't be in that culture anymore. Right. Then I came into a different culture, which was just attacking the entirety of all Southern people, which I always felt was like a ridiculous strategy, right? Because if you look, even if you're to base it on something that it's so fallacious as like voting Democrat, I mean, even in states like Texas, right, you still get 40%, 45%. You still have a lot of people who think similarly to you, right? It's just as like these fights at the margins, right?
Yeah.
And it's something that I think we can take that to a national level when we're thinking international.
I agree, and I just want to add too. I have whatever. I mean, there's a more macro point that I'll get to later, but just the two things. I think like for me, and especially because my kind of leftism was formed, it was very like Noam Chomsky, globalization protest, Amy Goodman kind of stuff, and that was great, and it did give you, and I think people need a thoroughgoing understanding of how much the United States, both in terms of its own history and contemporary realities with race and so on, is not a democracy. It's an unfulfilled democracy. And then also it's just I mean, even just going back into Brazil and seeing the U.S. support for what's happened in Brazil, it's truly disgusting, and it's total. There isn't a corner of the planet that we can't find U.S. abuse in terms of foreign policy. But I did find it, they're not the same, but I did find I find people that wave a flag and say, if you criticize this country or George Bush, get the fuck out. That's obviously infantile. But I also find it to be kind of infantile to say that you hate a place that you grew up in, that you hate a place that clearly had a whole bunch of things that, as flawed and as unfulfilled as they were taking advantage of, right? Like there was the whole dumb, like, oh, if you're right to criticize it, so don't criticize it, get the fuck out. But there's also literally like, we can criticize it. That means something, right? That is actually something. That's literally, and I think people saw it when they made false equivalencies actually in the election between Trump and Hillary, frankly, that like there was a lot of people with a kind of pseudo-radicalism that took certain liberal gains as a given. And now that they're in question, maybe they ought to think about those, even as bougie and as complete as they were, that there were some actual fucking gains that were made. And we should be building off of them and considering them and not just sort of posing against them. And, that's kind of part of my take.
All I can tell you is that there has been no radical movement of consequence and memorable importance that hasn't taken the position of demanding that the American promise be fulfilled.
Right.
And to do that without sounding scornful, you got to say, sorry, I'm pointing over here to the picture of King. I mean, the story of black radicalism has most often been the story of demanding the promise,
right,
not scorning the promise.
Right. Well, and that's also just strategic, because even like just, Bernie I love, but I do think like you can't just talk about mountain countries in the Nordics that people have never visited. You got to talk about what we did here.
This is my argument. Though.
Right.
I think
I agree with you.
This is something that Paul Robeson said very eloquently, right? So Paul Robeson, when he was put in front of like the House of Un-American Activities Committee, and he's going back and forth with them, he said, "I was born in this country, and a lot of this country still belongs to me yet. Right. It is my people who built this country, right? And there's no bullshit patriotism. There's no kind of patriotism that like the Sean Hannitys and these kind of people are trying to create, because that's false and that's fake.
That's fascism.
Right? There's a demand, and they're saying it's like, I'm as much a part of this country as anyone else, right? And I have a lot that is owed to me from this country, and I feel like there's a lot of groups that should be able to make that demand. From black people to women to the LGBTQ community to the working people who built this country as well, right? And who have been completely abused in this country that has really just hyper inflated like capitalism to an unbelievable level. But to deny those histories of those people who created this nation because you're trying to create an America that's a unity of like the ruling class instead of a unity of like the other people who've built the country, the people who have been stomped on by the ruling class, is incorrect.
Right.
Lincoln.
That's where the multitudes concept, I think, is actually helpful.
Lincoln hated slavery, but he actually doubted if blacks and whites could live together, given what he saw.
Right.
And he subscribed generally to the idea of colonization. You know what colonization meant? That African Americans would be enabled to return.
Yeah,
Africa,
founding of Liberia. Right? Yeah.
But he had a meeting in the White House during his presidency with a group, probably leading black figures in America.
Yeah, closer to the mic.
Oh, sorry. He had a meeting in the White House with leading black figures in America, and he brought up this question of colonization, and they blew up at him.
Right.
They said, I mean, basically,
Are
they
you
said,
kidding me?
Exactly.
This is our country.
And
We built this place.
He flipped. Never talked about that again. Okay. Now that's also the kind of leader we need.
Right.
Okay. Okay. And then I'll tell you something else. I don't know if it fits or not. My best friend for years, a Japanese American who was born in one of the camps during World War II, while his father was in uniform.
Jeez.
Okay,
That's so disgusting.
But I can't tell you how much pleasure he took in reminding others that his family had been here before most of their families. Okay,
right.
And moreover, he would not tolerate the knocking of the American promise. And during World War II, in fact, it's interesting. During World War II, during the Roosevelt years of 40, in 41, then to late 41 to 45, those who had the least to brag about in terms of being American served out of proportion to their numbers in the population in uniform.
Right.
This included Jews, Mexican Americans. They weren't even called Mexican Americans till after the war.
Right.
Japanese Americans, not out of proportion, but nevertheless 22,000 served in uniform. They were the most decorated combat unit in the American Army in World War II.
Right.
The Japanese American. I mean, those who have the most to gain from the American promise knew well the only way you gain it is by advancing it.
Right.
I mean, I think that's the fundamental thing that I think, the right has argued for years that the left has scorned America. That's been their claim for years.
Right.
And though I hate to grant them too much on that, it's not untrue. It's not untrue. And I'll give you the best example. The right, ever since Reagan, and I think we might have talked about this last time, the right, ever since Reagan, has done a phenomenal job of laying claim to American history, to speak as if they are speaking for the founders, that they're speaking for whoever, people admire in America. It's out of their mouths. Now, the fact is that the left could have easily laid better claim to American history. But over and over again, whether we're talking liberals, progressives, or in fact democratic socialists, we have repeatedly failed to lay claim to American history. Maybe because we're haunted by these images of the tragedies and the contradictions and the ironies.
And I think that's, I guess where I can't fully. I mean, I think it's just that, it's funny because I agree with you strategically, basically. I think that there's no electoral and no kind of mass market strategy that doesn't adopt this approach. In terms of my actual belief in it, I think you got to choose your reality to some extent. Because I don't see it in the same way you do, obviously, because there's just too many. To me, it's like when a genocide founds the place and slavery builds it and all these other things. To me, it's like it's a feature, not a bug, right? But conversely,
I didn't say
no,
what,
I know.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Absolutely,
Right.
I know that. I'm just saying the way I interpret the same set of things. But conversely, where I agree with you is I do think that the ammunition is
Come
there.
to Wisconsin and go with me to the Native American cemeteries.
Right.
Anytime approaching a holiday, every single man's grave has an American flag at it,
right,
placed by the tribe.
Right. No, but I think again in so many of these debates right now, what I'm running up against is essentially a set of, I would say, like middle class cultural postures that are overrepresented in basically certain kind of academic areas. Because I got to say, like, in different class backgrounds, especially, I don't ever, and I'm talking across racial and often people with extremely left politics, things like throwing up a flag for 4th of July is not, it's just like what you do. Now, it's not even a question. And it's funny because I'll admit, like, this sort of thing, in the same way that I've never resonated, like, I don't hate America, and I'm just not wired to have, like, I don't have heavily emotional relationships with things like that, right? It's like, okay, yeah, I mean, I live here, it's great, I don't hate it at all, but I can't relate to loving it either in that way. I got to be careful how this is clipped when I run for office. But I have to say, but outside of a very specific context, there's people who I'm saying is they're 100% on board on empire, on imperialism, on racism, everything we talk about, and they have a flag, and they totally would frame it as, we're going to understand things properly historically, but we're also going to give the ammunition. It's to take the last thing I'll say, to take another example.
It won't be the last thing you'll say.
It will not be the last thing I say. The last thing I say on this topic before we get to these two segments, but that is very correct, Professor, is that it's in some ways an analogy I'll draw is, I mean, we need to understand Nazi Germany, right? We need to understand Hitler, and we need to understand why that something just so horrific could come about. But in other ways, the failings of the Soviet Union are so much more important to understand because it started with beautiful motives, and I still think that the 1917 revolution is an incredibly positive thing in human history in that moment. That's just my view.
Yeah,
but the point being is that we have to understand how something whose origins and motives are of human liberation and of goodness get distorted. And that also, on the other hand, gives you, the people, Slavoj Žižek says this all the time. He says the people that got cracked down the most in the Soviet Union when he was coming up were the people who took it literally. They said, hey, these Constitution says that everybody has these amazing programs and that we're also in this participatory democracy. So, I have a bone to pick about such and such a thing. And they were immediately shut off. And I think it's in some way, and there's a similar dynamic in the United States. It is the movements that took those words seriously, and they said, well, you know what? That means a full democracy for everybody.
I'm not going to argue with you.
And I think that.
And I know you got to go to the
yes,
segments.
Yes, we do.
But I got this 2-minute thing, 1 minute thing.
Yeah, we're going to roll them the post game for sure.
Okay. Remind me to tell you the story about the flag pin.
Okay.
In the post game.
Okay. Folks, you know that you want to hear the Gulag segment, the Matt and Griscom segments, and a whole lot more conversation. Plus, I debated a Trumpista on I-24 News, and we're going to play that clip. It's pretty funny. There's a lot more to go over. Become a patron today. We're growing. We're at a steady clip, and we're a little under 300 away from that 2,000 goal. This weekend, Mike Hanna and I did a sort of brief on Turkey's strategy coming out of the murder of Jamal Khashoggi and the UN in the role in a sort of post-UN world right now. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, David. Thank you, David. Thank you, Jameson, for being here. Thank you for being here. Professor Harvey Kaye is hanging out with us in the post game.
And by the way, even if I weren't here, I'd be able to listen because I pay my dues.
Love this guy. We are going to see you in the post game. Thanks, everybody.